you seem to know so many things from like stuff that my parents would know.
I know. I think mentally I am about 60, and I think I'm in this body which doesn't really suit my mind. Yeah, nearly all my friends are in their 60s.
Cool. Well, let's crack things off with theatre. Let's go back to the beginnings. Now, you said that, you were shy and you were quiet when you were younger and, you didn't have as many friends in school, but then you found some solace in the theatre. It was one of the few places. So what is it that you learned about yourself during this time?
About myself? I don't know. I suppose it just provided kind of a place I could go to try to fit in. I never particularly fitted in anywhere when I was younger, but the theatre can be a bit of a sort of haven for oddballs and people that are a bit strange that don't fit in anywhere else. And it can give you a sense of community when you're rehearsing a show or doing like I used to attend sort of drama workshops every week at the Millennium Forum theatre. It does give you a sense of community because you all come together and work on something together, and it's a very collaborative way of working. It's different from studying mathematics or something where it's just you and a book. So it gave me something to hope for and something to sort of made me feel that, well, even if things aren't great now, my life might work out. It might be better in the future if I can just sort of stay here forever, I guess.
Was there a moment where you thought, where it clicked, where this was the place for me?
I don't know if there was just one moment. I think it happens incrementally over quite a long period of time. I think even from being a very, very young child, I always liked acting and I always wanted to do it. And for a long time, I felt that I wouldn't be good enough. And I think my hope when I was young was always that, God, I hope I can be good enough to do this, because you have to be, the standard is quite high if you want to be a professional actor and to be in that world. And I remember being 13 and thinking quite distinctly, I want to go to drama school when I'm 18 and I've got 5 years. And I wasn't stupid. I was self-aware enough to know that you're not good enough to get in. And thinking, well, you've got 5 years now to try to get yourself to the right level. And then I just auditioned everywhere. Anyone that was holding auditions, I was there. And I felt that I didn't really have a hope in hell, but I just sort of went anyway, despite the fact that I knew I wasn't quite polished enough. But I felt so strongly about it that I felt, well, even though I'm not quite ready, I still have to go and I have to try. And you don't get better unless you try. You get better by doing it. And the first few times you're crap. And then you're slightly better. And I spent years being crap. And then slowly becoming slightly less crap. But yeah, I mean, I think it takes bravery to at least try.
Of course. So when you were 13... What did your parents think at the time? Were they just like, no, be a doctor, be a lawyer, or were they supportive the whole time?
Well, I think parents, when you say you want to be an actor, it's like saying that you want to be a pop star, or it sounds like a childish, I think they thought that, she'll grow out of it, which is what you would think, it sounds like a silly fantasy that a child would come up with, but I was quite serious, and I think it took a long time for people to realize that I was serious. And when I said I was auditioning for drama schools, most people laughed at me, and I understand why, because it does sound it sounds fantastical. And again, I was a very, very quiet child, so people don't put those two things together, that if you're quiet you could still be a very good actor. People don't see that. The stereotype is that the actor is the loudest person in the room, and actually that's not necessarily the case. So Yes, I mean, a lot of people try to persuade me out of it, but I'm very stubborn.
Well, I'm glad that you persisted. So I know you said that you thought that your performances were crap, and you were crap.
This is true.
How do you feel about your performances now?
Well, I think I've gotten better.
I like to think so.
I would hope so. I mean, it depends on the part. It depends, I think, very much on the creative team that you're working with. If you're working with a very good director and very good writing, that really helps. Because the people around you elevate you and kind of make you better. So yeah, I would say it depends who I'm working with. I do my best.
I'm curious, is there a memory that sticks out in your mind from any of the roles that you played growing up, from like the Shakespeare, the Faches? Is the Fage? The Fage?
That's correct. Well done.
Is there
Beautiful pronunciation.
I did have to Google that. I wasn't sure exactly what a Fage was.
There you go.
You feel free to enlighten our listeners, please.
So a fèis is, I think it's the Irish word for festival or some sort of celebration. And we hold a fèis annually in Derry. And all the kind of local school children, it lasts about a week. And there's loads of different competitions. So there is, for instance, poetry reading. So you would choose a poem and perform it. And there's something called like a solo drama. So you would take a scene or a monologue or something from a play, usually sort of an Oscar Wilde or a Seamus Heaney, or like there's such a rich Brian Friel, a rich kind of tapestry of Irish playwrights. There's also Irish dancing, singing, choral singing. I mean, goodness me, it goes on all week, and there's different categories. So you'll get like poetry reading age 8, and then tomorrow poetry reading age 9, poetry reading age 10, and it goes up until like 16. And it's I didn't realize that at the time when I was growing up, I just thought this is normal, because when you're a child, you grow up, you just think, oh yes, that's just the fèis. And I was entered every year, and you do so many, like I think I used to do poetry reading in a scene every year, because my focus was acting, and I don't particularly sing, so I never sang, but some people sing. And I thought that was normal to have that kind of annual celebration of poetry and literature and music and drama. And I've realised now, since living in England, that it isn't, and that this is actually not a thing that most cities have. And I realise now how lucky I was to grow up in that environment, because it introduced me to so many amazing poets and writers and playwrights. And like I was a few months ago, I worked on A Woman of No Importance, the Oscar Wilde play, at a theatre in Chelsea, and I was reading through it, just reading the script, and I realised I recognised, because I've read this speech before, and I realised I did it at the Fèis 10 years ago. But it's fantastic, because it means that all that phenomenal writing and poetry just becomes a part of your everyday life, and it wasn't like a strange thing. It was, I would just be at school and, okay, now we're going to talk about the fèis, everyone. Here's your bit that you're going to do, and you just read it. And it gets you used to just picking up a piece of poetry and reading it, or picking up a piece of something, a scene from a play or something, and just doing it. So then when I was auditioning for drama schools later in life, it wasn't strange to me. It was something that I just considered quite normal. And I've realised that now, but a lot of people, if you weren't brought up with that, they sort of, you pick up a poem and they go, oh God, a piece of poetry. And they're kind of not, I think it's something that it's good if you can instill that in children, because then when you're an adult, it kind of comes to you a bit more naturally. So I was lucky, I now realise.
So was there a particular poem or a scene that stands out in your mind from that time?
So I remember distinctly reading the part of Mrs. Erlyn from Lady Windermeres Fan, which is a beautiful Oscar Wilde play. And I now realise I was way, way too young to understand what it was about, because I think I was about 12. So I now realise that a lot of the nuances were lost on me. But as an adult looking back, I can see how beautiful her speeches are. And the point that Wilde was trying to make about tolerance in society and not shaming people. And I can see he spent a lot of his life as a closeted homosexual and was vilified for it. And a lot of that play is about promoting tolerance and acceptance of different people's lifestyles in society, and how we're all human and we all deserve to live. And the fact that someone just handed me that casually when I was 12, I was like, here, read this. Even though some of it will have been lost on me, I still think it's fantastic that somebody took the time to do that. And the quality of the literature that was being divvied out to 12-year-olds, I think, is fantastic.
No, absolutely. I think at that age I was reading Spot with the Ball, See Spot Run.
Yeah, but it's, you know, it's like you don't wake up as an adult who goes to the theatre. You have to instill it in children, or at least give children the opportunity. You don't wake up as an adult able to play the flute beautifully. You have to give lessons to children. And I think, you know, it's an argument for how the importance of including arts in the curriculum in schools, because I think schools nowadays seem to be sort of hyper-focused on STEM subjects, which is obviously, you know, very necessary and fantastic and, you know, wonderful, but it's important to take a few hours in the week to show the children some literature, you know, if you want to have adults who have that appreciation for it.
So I want to skip forward now to the Arden School of Theatre in Manchester. Is there anything that you've taken from that time in the theatre that you still bring with you today to any project that you work on?
Yeah, I mean, that was where I went to drama school. I did 3 years of professional actor training, stage practice, so focused on the stage rather than the screen. And I still use things that I learned there, you know, every day. That's the kind of the foundation of my practice. I had a good time. It was challenging. I learned a lot. I think the thing with actor training is kind of some of it is useful, some of it isn't. But, you know, you kind of pick out of it what's useful. Yeah, I mean, it was good, I think, overall.
Well, what was the feeling like when you finally got that acceptance? Because I know you said that you tried applying for everything and everywhere.
Oh, goodness. I felt very relieved and very grateful. I still remember hiding in the toilets at the Arden School of Theatre, having done the audition, with a kind of, because I kind of felt that it had gone well, and I'd thought, I'm in with a chance, please, I'm in with a chance. And then they offered me a space, and I just thought, oh, thank God, and I just grasped the opportunity with both hands, and wild horses couldn't have dragged me away from the course. And I just thought, no matter how difficult it is, I'm going to complete it and give it my best.
Do you remember what you auditioned with?
Yes, I did an Alan Ayckbourn speech from Confusions, from the very, the final act, the sort of coda of Confusions is 5 monologues from the characters that have been in the play. And it's a lady on a park bench, which is such a stereotypical setting for a monologue. If I see one more short film set on a park bench, I think I'll scream. But and she's talking to a stranger on a park bench, and she's got a sort of injury on her head, and it comes out throughout the monologue that her husband hit her, and that's what the injury is. So I did that. And then I did a bit of another speech, which was an Irish piece, I think set something to do with the Troubles. I can't quite recall. So it was a comedy hour at the Art.
Well, it must have gone down a treat if you scored a position.
Hope so. I don't know.
So I know something that you're quite partial to is obviously the works of Shakespeare. I'm curious, what is it that you think is been so long staying about the works of Shakespeare? Why has it drawn you in, and why has it drawn in so many other people for so long now?
I think the writing is unsurpassed in the English canon, which is why it has had such longevity, and it speaks to something universal. He was fantastic at describing experiences in a way which there is a universality about the human experience, and there's certain experiences which I think resonate with nearly all of us that have been alive, and he was fantastic at capturing it. And I think the wonderful thing is that as I've gotten older, my appreciation of the work has changed and evolved. So I remember when I was going through looking for audition speeches, for instance, when I was 17 years old, and you get these sort of books and you think, oh, no. And there's a speech, Joon Lael, I am by birth a shepherd's daughter, which I remember dismissing at the time when I was younger, when I was looking for an interesting speech to do, and I just saw nothing very exciting in it. And then last year I was auditioning for the RSC, and once again I was looking through speeches trying to find something interesting to present, and I read it again sort of as a woman who's 10 years older, and I suddenly saw it made me cry, and it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever read. And I chose it, and I did it for the RSC, and it was one of the better performances that I think I've given in my own opinion of myself. So it's interesting how, as I've gotten older, I can now see something in the speech which I missed when I was younger because I wasn't mature enough to see it.
So I want to get on to Kenneth Branagh now, because I know it was Kenneth Branagh in
I feel so embarrassed about this because
not at all, he's a great actor.
I mentioned Kenneth Branagh once in an interview several years ago, and I think people have latched onto it, and now every time I do an interview I get asked about him as if I'm his friend or something. And I even did an interview with an Irish paper about a year ago, and on the article they actually printed a photograph of Kenneth Branagh with and I thought, I feel like if I ever meet him I'm going to have to apologise for the number of references and photographs, and it's just...
Do you think he's just confused, like, who is this girl?
Well, quite, yeah. Like, every time I do an interview there's a picture of his face, and he's never even met me or seen me, and it's embarrassing at this stage.
I tell you what, is there another actor then besides Kenneth Branagh that you draw inspiration from?
I like a lot. I mean, I love Kenneth Branagh. I've just seen Johnny Flynn in The Motive in the Queue at the National, and he's an actor I've followed for many years.
I really want to see that.
It's phenomenal. It's so good, and it's one of my favourite portrayals of Hamlet. I mean, I've seen a lot of very good Hamlets, but Flynn does Hamlet, but as Richard Burton doing Hamlet. So he's doing Richard Burton doing Hamlet, so it's a real tour de force. And I remember him because I saw him back in 2012 doing Twelfth Night with Mark Rylance and Samuel Barnett, and I followed all of those actors. They've all had amazing careers. I draw inspiration from all of them. I think Adam Godley is amazing. I saw him do Lehman and various other things. He's a real chameleon, incredibly versatile.
Do you see yourself going back to the theatre more, or is it now just you're very much on the screen now?
No, I very much want to go back. I miss it, and I do a lot of work with equity. and I hear a lot about what's going on the stage through equity, because I'm one of the people that gets the phone call when people are having an issue or something. It's like, guess what happened on I think, oh God, what? So I am still very kind of connected to the theatre through my equity work. I do want to go back. I'm looking for the right project.
More Shakespeare, perhaps?
I don't know, maybe. It depends who wants me. And and I think the thing is, theatre takes a lot more time out of your schedule. It's not like with filming, I can kind of take a punt on a film. I can do 3 days on it, and if it works out, great. And if it doesn't work out, then you think, oh, well, it's only 3 days. But the theatre takes like months out of my schedule, so it has to be something that I think is worth that amount of time commitment.
Absolutely. Now, you've said before that you don't really... It's not the genre that attracts you, it's good writing.
That's true.
So what do you think makes good writing?
I mean, it's almost easier to tell you what makes bad writing.
I'm all ears.
It's, I think, a lot of... bad writing tends to have a lot of explanation that doesn't need to be there. There's a scene, I think it's the opening of Ex Machina, when
Brilliant film.
Yeah, really, really good. Domhnall Gleeson is travelling to the island and he's in a helicopter. And it's so succinct in that there's one shot of him and you can see him sort of people cheering. So you get the idea that he's won a new job or won a prize or something. And then the next shot is the helicopter. And it's only like 2 lines. It's, when do we get to his land? We're already there. And that establishes that the guy's really rich because he owns all this, so much land. The island is huge. You can tell he's going to a remote place, bit of an eccentric owner, mysterious guy. And it sets up so much stuff really, really succinctly in about 2 lines and 3 shots. And it takes less than 5 minutes. And then sometimes I've sat through play readings or script readings where it takes 45 minutes to set up the same amount of stuff. So there's sometimes a lot of overwriting, like, when do we arrive at the mysterious island? We will be arriving there in about an hour's time. And just like something that you're taking 5 sentences to say something that could have been said in 1 sentence. And a lot of the time on film, it actually works better almost with no dialogue. Sometimes I could do it with my facial expression, and they've got like 2 lines, and I could have done it with just, or just a certain like raising my eyebrow or anything. So I'd say a lot of, inexperienced writers have a lot of exposition or a lot of explanatory. I remember I had a long monologue in a film years back. I was meant to be in love with somebody, and I went on and on and on. I love his expression when he's playing football. I love the way his socks feel warm in the morning. I love the way he smiles and it just, oh Jesus Christ! And it was hard to deliver because it was so saccharine and kind of. And I thought if I were writing it, I would cut all of that out and just have. I mean, I saw a wonderful declaration of love in I think it's called Love Song by Abby Morgan, where the characters. I think, he says to her, do you trust me? She says, more than anyone else. Well, that's not good enough. I hate you. I hate you too. And it doesn't go on forever. It's not pages and pages. It's quite succinct, but you get the idea that they love each other. And then there's me. I love the way his socks feel. And oh, God. Oh, and so... Abby Morgan was better.
I get the feeling because like I feel like good writing sometimes goes under the table. Like it gets not as much notice as obviously like a great performance. And like one thing that really sticks to my mind, probably because I watched it most recently, was Ahsoka. It's the new Star Wars TV show. And
I've seen the adverts. Yeah.
Well, I caved and I watched the first episode last night.
Is it good?
Yeah, I think it has the same problem that nearly every Star Wars TV show has, where it's got such high production values and they've got such great talent behind the camera, but they're just written by 12-year-olds. Because like the opening scene is just like, so are you saying that this is a hidden treasure map? Yes, I am saying this is a hidden treasure map. And where does this lead to? Oh, well, this leads to so and so. Oh, and you know that we got a sorted past. But like, it's just literally just two people having so much exposition on camera, and I'm like. And it's such a shame too, because Rosario Dawson, who's like the lead actress, I think she's an amazing actress, but some of the writing is just awful, and you can see her just bending over backwards trying to get something out of those lines. The thing is,
great performances are built on great writing, and it's very hard. It's hard to deliver bad writing, but I suppose that's your job, to sort of try and make something out of the.
Oh, absolutely. Like Rosario Dawson does a great job of doing it.
I'm sure.
Now, let's go forward to. So I know you've got so many things in the works. So I spoke to you maybe about 2-3 months ago, and then since then you've got 3 new feature films that you've got to talk to me about. And like there's basically Tom Cruise, Nicolas Cage, and then there's like you and like hardest working actors out there at the moment.
Oh god,
they're going to start hitting up your agent.
I wish I was commanding the same fee. That's what I would say. I'm much cheaper.
Well, hopefully you don't have the same tax problems that Nicolas Cage has either. But the one that I'm interested about is playing Velma in How to Kill Monsters.
So I saw this on Friday night at the Cineworld in Leicester Square. And that was the first time I had seen the film myself, and it was fantastic. And I can say that because I didn't write it or direct it, but I was genuinely so impressed with it. It's one of, I think, my favourite things that I've ever done. It's a kind of rollicking, good-humoured romp. It's so really well written. So, we were talking about writing earlier. The script is really tight. There's not a lot of that extraneous exposition kind of dialogue. It's what I would say it has this wonderful layer of self-awareness, which a lot of low-budget horrors don't have. A lot of low-budget horrors almost take themselves a bit too seriously. And like the whole film opens with a sort of cabin in the woods sequence, which is such
classic.
a kind. Yeah, it's an archetype which is done so many times, and I think sometimes I've seen it done very seriously. And I think the great thing about Cal and Stuart is they had the self-awareness to know that they're doing the same horror trope, and they kind of. There's a layer of irony, and they're doing it kind of tongue-in-cheek. And it was genuinely, it's really funny. Like, and I was kind of surprised because sometimes I've sat through comedies which are, I don't find them funny. But this genuinely was funny, and there's some really, really lovely comedic performances. Johnny Vivace does a really hilarious sort of bumbling policeman who can't get on top of what's happening, and like all the actors are really, really good. There's Lindsay in the lead is phenomenal, and I didn't realize at the time I was shooting it how good she was, because I didn't see the breadth of her role. I can't kind of give it away, but she has a lot to do and kind of has to play. She goes on a journey, which is a phrase I hate, but I don't know how else to put it. And yeah, she's just phenomenal, and she manages this incredibly broad role with an awful lot of kind of different things to do really, really well, and is very convincing in the whole story. Rebecca as Big Jenny was hilarious. There's so many hilarious moments.
What was the response like when you watched it with the crowd?
Really, really warmly received. And I think, festival audiences are kind of interesting in that when you watch a film at a festival, it tends to be an audience of people who are either involved in the film themselves or sometimes like actors that are hoping to work with the director in the future. So they're there with a kind of networking frame of mind, or like horror, people that are real hardcore horror fans. So they kind of like whatever you show them. So I always think you shouldn't be, just because the audience at the screening loved it doesn't necessarily mean anything, because, it's going to be, often it's people with a vested interest in the film doing well. But I can genuinely say that it was a genuine warm response. It wasn't just a sort of tepid, oh, well done, or, oh, I'm glad it's over. The people genuinely liked it. And it's lovely watching. It's such a big screen. I think it's a 260-seat auditorium. And when everybody laughs together, it's a wonderful kind of communal experience.
It must be so nice to be able to kind of get that instantaneous feedback in a way, whereas normally, obviously, like a screen performance is so divorced from the final reception. So.
Exactly. And it's only through kind of going to the screening that you see what the audience response is, because otherwise, sometimes I shoot something and I for whatever reason, I can't attend a public screening of it, and then I kind of never know whether people liked it or not. But I really hope it goes on to have a life beyond the festivals. I think it genuinely deserves it. It was written with such intelligence and put together really well. I thought the director, Stuart and Cal, Stuart was the director, Cal was the producer, and Paul Butler, who was involved in writing it, such a good job, really a fantastic team. I felt very lucky. The truth is that I had 2 films at Fright Fest this year, and for neither of them was I the first choice of actress, which I think is interesting. I'm nobody's first choice. So on both occasions, I was kind of drafted in as a last-minute replacement. So I guess it's nice that people feel, who can we get in a squeeze? We're desperate. Who's available? Ayvianna. But it was a really unexpected joy, because I didn't think I was going to be involved in either project, and then I got sort of I got in at the last minute.
Well, it's amazing how many iconic roles that you think are just destined for one actor was never offered to that actor in the first place. Like Aragon was not Viggo Mortensen's first role. What is it? Marty McFly? That wasn't Michael J. Fox.
They actually filmed a bit of, like, they started filming it with a different actor, Eric
Stoltz.
Yeah. Poor Eric.
I know. And it must be you must look back at it and think, if only I'd kind of put in, if things had worked out differently.
If only I tried a bit harder.
So no, I'm glad that, you've ended up landing these roles. It's been great.
So what happened was, I saw an advert on Facebook that Stuart Spark had put up, and I think it was a Friday afternoon, and they wanted someone who could be in Leeds to start shooting Monday morning. And I almost didn't bother applying because of a sort of, you have a lazy kind of, it's Friday, I'm tired, I want to spend the weekend. Do I want to be auditioning at the weekend? I'm like, ugh. And then I thought, oh no, don't be lazy, come on, get on with it. So I sent off a tape, wasn't expecting anything really. And again, I don't think I even tried that hard. I think I sent the first or second take of the scene. I think I was just kind of, but in a way, I think sometimes that actually often works out better, because you're a bit more relaxed. Sometimes when I really, really want the role and I'm really trying to please and I hope I get it right, actually it's not your best performance. I've noticed that actually when I've done filming. When you film a scene, what they do is they have the camera, you'll do the scene once with the camera on you, and then you do it a couple of takes, and then they'll turn the camera around and you'll do it again with the camera on you this time. And people often give the better performance when the camera is not on them because you're more relaxed.
Absolutely. I can imagine it must be when especially when you've got cameras that are so close to your face, it must be
and then
intimidating.
The camera turns around to the other person, you go, oh, and then you act properly because you're relaxed. So, but yeah, so I sent this tape off on it was either Friday night or Saturday morning. And then I got the call saying, yeah, we liked it. Can you come to Leeds on Monday morning? And I went, oh. Because you just think, oh, God, travelling and I'm going to have to find somewhere to stay. But I'm so glad that I did because it was fantastic. And I was very, very, very lucky to get in to do anything in it at all. Very last minute.
Well, so you've been so prolific in the horror genre. So I'm curious, what is it that you think has drawn in such fascination from people with the horror genre? Because obviously, I want to get the shit scared out of me. It's not quite a feeling that most people want to go for, but it seems to have obviously garnered such an audience.
I think there's something quite primal about being scared. I think it takes you back to your kind of caveman bit of your brain, which is still lurking underneath everything. And there's something very human about sitting around the campfire telling stories. And being scared can be quite fun if you fundamentally feel safe. I think that it's a very versatile genre. You can do so many different things within it. Like, for instance, Punch, the other film I had at Fright Fest, explores social issues and a young woman who kind of wants to get out of the working class insular town where she grew up, where there aren't many opportunities. And she's got a mother who kind of seems to be a bit of an alcoholic, and she's dealing with a lot of these issues. And that's explored within the framework of a horror film. Punch, on the other, How to Kill Monsters, on the other hand, is this rollicking comedy with a bumbling policeman and aliens and monsters and tentacles and fun things. And that's horror. Dracula, which is also out at the moment, is an adaptation of a wonderful piece of literature and kind of quite a classic period piece. Almost like a chamber piece, I would describe it. You can do sci-fi, you can do dystopian futures, you can do so much within horror. So I think it's one of the kind of broadest genres, and we have the most dedicated fans. Absolutely.
I feel like, it's one of those things where it's Friday night, and I'm old enough to remember going to the video store, and then you go to the horror section, and then you're just like, let's do it. Let's get a horror film going. You just mentioned Dracula. So I know you're playing Maria, one of the principal brides of Dracula. How did it feel taking on such one of those classic roles?
I was really pleased to get the opportunity to work with Steve Lawson again. I worked with him briefly on Ripper in a much smaller role, and then he brought me back, didn't make me audition, just a straight offer for this film, which is always really nice because then you think, I must not have mucked up too badly on the last film if he's willing to have me back.
Nailed it.
Can't have been too awful. I do feel a sense of responsibility when you're playing kind of iconic roles or real people. I mean, Maria's not, I suppose, a real person in the technical sense, but Dracula is such such an iconic story. You feel a kind of responsibility to try to do it well. So I felt I was pleased to get the opportunity, but it's a challenge and I didn't want to mess it up.
I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Thank you.
Now, I need to refer to my notes for this one because this one's a doozy.
Oh my God.
So according to your IMDb, you have 11 upcoming films.
11? Can that be true?
I did have to question that. So we've got The Petting Zoo, Victor, personally, my favorite title is this one, the and the Quest for the Golden Dragon Skull.
And the quest, yeah.
Dreamhacker, The Final 45, Burnt Flowers, Derelict, Yellow, Skull Hunter, Bogeyville, and Video Shop Tales of Terror, Lust and Revenge.
My favourite qualities are lust and revenge.
I do have to ask, though, where does this drive to work so much come from? And please don't say paying rent.
I have always had a very strong drive. I suppose I want to succeed. My parents were both born into quite poor circumstances. My father was one of 8 children. My mother, her father used to drive a tractor, and I don't think had very much access to education. I don't know if my grandmother could even read or write terribly well. She probably write a bit, but not brilliantly. And my parents pulled themselves up in the world. My father recently retired, but he was a very renowned engineer, and he came from very humble circumstances, but rose to be a very, very successful engineer, first in his family to go to university. And they did that through, I think, their own sheer will. It wasn't just it's almost a decision. It's like, right, I'm going to succeed and I'm going to make something of my life. And again, when I was young, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, oh, everyone's like that. And I've now realised, actually, I was quite lucky. I had 2 very good parents that instilled that work ethic and that drive in me. And me and my sister were both brought up, with that work ethic that, you work hard and you do your best. Like, we both had 100% attendance at school. There was no sort of, oh, I don't feel like it today. You're going. And
we would have definitely very different school records, I think.
Yeah, no, but that's how it was. And my mother, when we got home in the evenings after school, it was, right, homework, books on the table, and it's done to a high standard. And that's just how we were brought up. You work and you, like my father came to my house. I now live in Ealing now, a few weeks ago to help me. I wanted to paint some walls and just kind of do the place up a bit. And there's a bit of wood in my garden, which is it holds up a roof. There's like a seating area and like a little roof that comes up and it's held up by a bit of wood. And the wood, I noticed it was rotting. And I said, we're going to have to get this replaced. And he said, well, I'll replace it. And I said, you can't. This is like a 2-man job because someone's going to have to hold up the roof while you remove. And he said, I'll get it done. And I said, yeah, you go. But he did it. He built a thing like a strut to hold up the roof so that he could go in and remove a bit of wood and lift another. And he physically lifted the wood himself and just got it. And he just made it happen. He went out, he bought nails, he bought screws. And it's just, I've realised now it's that attitude that he has of, I'm getting this wood on that. I'm whatever it takes. By tonight, that wood's going to be on that wall. And he did it. And so it's whatever that quality is. I've inherited it.
Not a bad quality to inherit. And then lastly, is there a particular performance in these next 11 that you're quite excited for people to go see? And I can read you the list again if you need a refresher.
I think I really enjoyed working on Yellow, directed by Darren James King, who's a very good director and also a very good actor himself. Good actors often make good directors. And I play a woman who is raped, and we did the rape scene, me and then the male actor Cameron Bell, and that was another role where I felt a real responsibility to do it properly, because a lot of women genuinely have been through this harrowing experience, and again, you don't want to muck it up, because I feel I owe those women a good portrayal of what they went through. And that was very challenging, and I found it more upsetting, I think, than I than I thought. I kind of thought when I took the role, I'll be fine. Oh, I'm an actress. I'll be fine. And then as we were going through the motions of actually doing it, I did find myself getting genuinely upset because, you know, I am an actor, but then underneath that somewhere I am still a woman, and there was a moment when he kind of threw me with some force on the sofa, and there was a bit of me that felt it, and I kind of, and then, you know, hopefully you're able to use that in the performance to make it look real. So, yeah, I would be happy. Again, I'm never kind of drawn toward comedy. I feel like I always, the films I choose are always sort of really depressing. But I'd be happy to for people to see that, because I think it's, that was one of the performances where I had to reach into myself.
Well, I'll be looking forward to seeing it. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for your time, for speaking to me. It's very kind of you.
Oh, of course. Anytime. I'm sure I'll be talking to you again in a few weeks when you've got 7 more films to promote.
You're going to be sick of looking at me like that girl again.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all, folks.